I went to bed, and by the time I woke up, I opened my inbox, and there was literally hundreds and hundreds of notifications from PayPal saying, new user signed up, new user signed up, new payment, new payment, new payment.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. As entrepreneurs, we're always imagining kind of a huge growth moment, that period where all the things we've been working hard on, all the ideas that we've put into practice and built our business around, suddenly attract those ideal clients that we've been trying to connect with over the course of so much time. And it starts making us money. It starts working. It starts getting folks excited. People start sharing, and the snowball is rolling down the hill. That's the moment that we're all looking forward to. Maybe you've experienced that moment. Maybe you've experienced it many times as your product takes off and then falls off, and then another product takes off and falls off. Or maybe you've just experienced a steady stream of growth over the course of your entire business. And then there are some of us that have never had that big moment, that period where people really got into the product. Well, our guest today has had plenty of those moments. He is an influencer himself, and he has built a business around influencer marketing. Now, here's what I mean. Influencer marketing is when you have people in the front of some kind of concept, like LeBron James. If LeBron James wears a pair of shoes or a shirt or, bow tie in his hair, then that is going to go viral, and it's going to affect the sales of that thing that he is wearing. So LeBron James is probably one of the biggest influencers in the world. And so influencer marketing is when you connect with people who are influencers in a group. In the case of our guest today, he has connected with folks who are influencers in the makeup world, who use makeup and then show that on Instagram, do certain kinds of smoky eyes or mascara applications and show that on Instagram and grow a following because of that. There are obviously products behind that, right? There's makeup, mascara, eyeliner, all those kinds of things are the products behind it. And Dhar has made a living by selling those products, by bringing those products to the world through influencers. And he'll talk about that in our interview. So it's fascinating because on one hand, we feel like, we want to see like real, true experiences in the social media world, right? And we do, we absolutely do. And at the same time, if someone has done something to grow a big following, and then they happen to say, hey, here's a product I use and I love it, and here's why. And if you decide that you love it too, awesome. Like this balance, right? In the social media world, like you can tell when someone's selling something. And if you feel like they're selling you something, it feels very different than if they're just telling you what they're using. So I ask him some of those questions about those topics, as well as his background, his upbringing, and how he's built a multi-million-dollar business off of influencer marketing. So without further ado, Dhar Mann talks with me about LiveGlam, his marketing and makeup business. I hope you enjoy the interview. Hey, this is Jeremy Goodrich. I'm the owner of Shine Insurance Agency and your host for the Scratch Entrepreneur podcast. Super pumped about our guest today. He started a business about 3 years ago with pretty much nothing. I mean, $600, started it from his apartment and had a vision for where he wanted to take this business. It was a makeup business, which we'll be digging into. I'm kind of pumped about. He has grown to have hundreds of thousands of followers on their Instagram account. All sorts of good things are happening for the LiveGlam business. And Dhar, in his own way, is also advising other business owners and helping us all become better people. So Dhar, thank you so much for joining us on Scratch Entrepreneur.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm stoked.
So did I miss anything in that intro? Get anything totally wrong? Just go a direction that maybe left something out?
Well, when you said he had a vision 3 years ago, my vision was really just to pay rent. So I didn't have too much of a vision when starting out, but just kind of figuring it out as we go.
Okay, cool. And we're going to dig into the business and how that all started. But before we do that, I want to do a quick fire at the very beginning and give our listeners maybe just some different resources and things that you dig into as a human that maybe they can check out as well. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Cool. So let's talk. Let's start with a podcast you're listening to. What are you into right now?
Listen to Gary Vee.
Yeah, Gary
I
Vee.
think everybody's listening to Gary.
Absolutely. Really cool business advice and just, I mean, kind of like your, life advice too, right? Just how to like put it all together and make sense of what you're up to and make the best out of the life you've got, right?
Exactly.
All right, cool. How about a book that you're reading right now?
Yeah, I'm on my last 10 minutes of a book probably you haven't heard of. It's called Measure What Matters.
Measure What Matters. All right.
It's by some of the people that really advise like Google and Intel like early on. And it talks about just setting high level company objectives and building your whole team culture around those metrics. Because a lot of times like companies don't set solid goals. Like we all obviously all want to grow, but this book really talks about just setting very clear goals and then just building your company culture all around them.
Especially this time of year. I mean, we're having this conversation early January. It's a great time to think about your company objectives for the coming, calendar year. And it feels like, the way you set things is a lot of times where your business goes. If you dream it, you'll get there. And if you dream low, then you'll get there too. And it sounds like that's maybe a basic foundation in structuring that. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And it's all stories of entrepreneurs who have actually done it. So it's a really interesting read.
Okay, cool. How about your tech stack? We've all got a tech stack, the stuff we work with for our business. Is there any piece of your tech stack that's just rocking your world right now?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people are just sort of underwhelmed when I tell them we're just built on WordPress, using WooCommerce subscription for everything. So yeah, nothing too impressive there.
Okay. All right, cool. You just talked about the book you're reading. Maybe this last one comes back to that book, but how about a planning tool you use to put your business together?
Yeah, definitely. So Skype is the way that we communicate. We're on Slack as well. But we use this software, this project management software called Monday that has just been a game changer for us. It's a really productive, collaborative tool with awesome visuals that just helps align everybody.
Okay. Is it like in the style of Trello kind of in that world?
Exactly. We considered Trello, but we eventually went with Monday.
Okay. All right. We'll check that out. We use Trello, and I like that, but the visual side of it is what's powerful to me. For whatever project management tool we use, it has to be visual and kind of laid out in that way. So it sounds like Monday's in that vein, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, that was the quick fire. Thanks for sharing those things with us. I hope that all of our listeners got at least one thing that maybe they can dig into after that. Let's talk about you and your business. You said you just wanted to pay rent and you were trying to figure out how to do it. You end up starting a makeup company, and you don't contour makeup yourself, as far as I know. At least you didn't when you were first starting or doing any of that kind of stuff. So how did this idea come about, and how did you feel like this is the direction that I want to go?
It's funny that you even know contour. I think you're ahead of the pack. Just the fact that you know how to say that. So started a few years ago. I was just had a really, really low time in my life. I had pretty much lost everything. Like I had more checks in the mail to bills than I even had cash in my bank account. Put it that way. I was sharing this small 200 square foot studio apartment that I actually shared with a friend. It was so small that there was no room for a bed. There was just a futon that literally shouldn't be called a futon. It should have just been called a metal cage because it was so uncomfortable.
No.
And one slept on the floor, one slept on the futon, and I was living in Los Angeles. I am still living in Los Angeles. I was literally on the verge of giving up and moving back to the Bay Area, which is where I'm originally from, and to San Francisco area, and moving with my parents. Which being South Asian, Indian specifically, moving back in with your parents at 30 years old is like one of the most humiliating things that you could possibly do.
Oh no, yeah.
And, I was working on like different ideas and nothing was really clicking. And then one day I happened to be having lunch and met this beauty influencer who was popular on Instagram. I knew nothing really about the beauty world, but she was telling me how she was traveling all over the world and giving these sold out makeup seminars, and girls were paying, anywhere from $400 to $500 a pop to come listen to her for a couple hours, do a makeup tutorial. My ears were ringing. I was sort of looking for any opportunity I could get. And I just asked her casually, not thinking much into it. I was like, why don't you just take the concept online? You could probably reach a whole lot more people. And she was like, wow, that's a great idea, except I would have no idea how. And, I had no idea either. I had never started an online business. Knew nothing about makeup. I knew nothing about subscriptions. But it's just like anything else, like opportunity becomes the mother of invention, or necessity becomes the mother of invention. So I just blurted out, like, I can do it.
Yeah.
And she's like, really? You know how? And I'm like, yeah, I do. She agreed. And literally 2 weeks later, with just $600 in my bank account, I went to Best Buy. I bought a couple of softbox lights and a webcam for $400. And then I found someone on Craigslist to build a really scrappy website. He agreed to $400 to build sort of the V1 of this. I only had $200 left, so he believed in me and agreed to take 50% up front and 50% launch. And then we launched 2 weeks after I met this beauty influencer, and it was just a massive hit, like from day one.
Wow. So in those 2 weeks, is there some insight? Because that's a dream, right? Like all of us have these seed ideas. And for you, it wasn't necessarily your own personal passion, but it fell in your lap a little bit. It was like, hey, here's something that could really be awesome. In those 2 weeks that you take to put it together, do you have any insights into like how you structured that to work? Was it just kind of like you woke up in the morning and made a list and then checked it off all day long? Or did you start with a hierarchical system of some kind? Like how did you go from point zero to point A?
I really looked at what are the most important pieces. And that's why sometimes being broke, is an advantage, because I think a lot of people get sort of too hung up on perfection or, sort of having like 100 things that they need to do in order to launch a company. I just looked at the very bare basics. I'm sure I missed a lot of important things that being a larger company, you couldn't afford to do. But to me, I was like, okay, I need a website. I need to stream. So I have to have like lights and a camera. And then I was fortunate to be partnering with somebody who could bring all of the marketing and sales. So all I was doing is really providing a platform, partnering with somebody who believed in me. And I think that's the reason it was so successful so quick.
And that's great. I think that all of us forget what you just described, and that is that you've got to start and you've just got to do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I fail at that so often because I'm like, oh, it has to be perfect. This whole thing has to be right before we launch. And I think you learned that a lesson that lots of entrepreneurs learn, that just get it out there and start getting that feedback, right? Where you can see what's working and what isn't. And that's where you really grow and find what is, well, there's no such thing as perfection, but what is as close to the right answer as possible. Is that a fair assessment of that, how you grew?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what stage you're at, because there was times where I used that thinking later down the path in building LiveGlam, where I still was of the mentality of minimal viable product. But the one part to consider is that when building a brand, your online reputation really sticks with you. And even as your product evolves, it's sometimes hard to evolve your online reputation because people are so stuck in what the product used to be. So I think trying to find that balance, like if you're just starting out and creating something, I would be much more inclined to just say, yeah, just start, literally just get something out there. That's how I started, even with creating my motivational videos. Just on my birthday, I decided to release my first motivational video without thinking too much into it. And it was a total flop. And it continued to be, every video I released was a total flop. And now 6 months later, I've got over 200 million views. So sometimes you just need, that get up and go and like just get it out the door. But then as you start to grow, as you start to build an online reputation, sort of depending on what your product is, I definitely would say take a little bit more time to make sure you're getting the product right.
So let's talk about that growth phase for either LiveGlam or the motivational videos. What was a point where you were like, oh, this is going to be a hit. This snowball is rolling down the hill. It's getting bigger and bigger, and this is going to be awesome. What was that point, and what was the story like?
Yeah, I've had multiple points where I felt that way. And I think that's the way with any sort of growth hacking or any sort of marketing. Like you discover something and you're just like, oh my God, this is awesome. Sales are through the roof or exploding. I finally, unlocked that sort of winning combination. And then 2 months later, like that strategy no longer works or it's saturated. And then you feel like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. I have no idea how I'm ever going to grow again. So it was multiple snowballs, I should say, that got me to like different stages. But in the beginning, everything was just around selling content. And so what I was doing is, I partnered with this first beauty influencer. So the very first day that we launched, like the beauty influencer was supposed to make the announcement. It was going to be at like 10 a.m. The night before, I went to bed, excited about this launch. In order to have like a video on the website, on her website, I had to upload a little intro video on YouTube so that I can embed the URL onto the website. So I didn't really think much of it. I uploaded this video. I pushed it to the website. I went to bed, and by the time I woke up, I opened my inbox, and there was literally hundreds and hundreds of notifications from PayPal saying new user signed up, new user signed up, new payment, new payment, new payment. And I looked at it, and I really quickly went to look at the beauty influencer's Instagram to see if she had posted. Maybe she forgot about our launch time, and she didn't mention it at all. So I freaked out. I thought it was some glitch. I called my web developer and I was like, hey, something is going crazy. All these transactions, all these fraudulent transactions are happening. Figure out a way to stop it. We're about to launch. And he's like, okay, let me look into it. And he looks into it. And then he calls me back like 5 minutes later and he goes, Dhar, like all those transactions are legit and they're actually coming from YouTube. And so what happened was, just because I uploaded a video and I put her name on it, and her name was so highly searched, YouTube ended up making it a trending video. I was not expecting any sales from this whatsoever. For me, it was just about completing the website and embedding this URL. And then that video ended up taking off. And our very first day in sales, I think we generated about $60,000 in sales.
Wow.
And then after that, every time she would post would just be massive new people. So I think our first month in revenue, we did like over $100,000, and there's no physical product costs, right? So it's all just content. So there wasn't much expenses besides, paying the partnership with her. That continued to ride out for a while. And, at that time I was just like, I made it, this is going to be huge. And I started creating all these Excel graphs and saying, okay, we're growing at this percent and that's going to continue, and getting like overly excited. And then all of a sudden, you saturate your market. People get used to seeing something. It's no longer like new and exciting. And it just stopped working as effectively. And, it was definitely a lot of like banging my head against the wall thinking, now what? Was this sort of just like a quick rise and fall? Does this not have staying power? And for a long time, I thought, we weren't going to be able to figure out that next growth spurt. But then eventually we did. It was just a slightly different concept. It took us pivoting from selling content to selling products.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. We're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about kind of what your mantras are. Also, in that pivot, what failures maybe you've experienced. And you're starting to dig into that right now, which is a perfect segue. But maybe some failures and how you grew, how you pivoted, and how you changed into the next thing. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. Scratch Entrepreneur is brought to you by Shine Insurance. At Shine, our goal is simple: to change the way you feel about insurance. Start that evolution today at shineinsurance.com. All right, we're back with Dhar Mann. He is the founder of LiveGlam and a motivational speaker on his own. Dhar, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, I'm fired up. Thank you.
Cool. Is there a mantra you repeat to yourself every day, every week, anything like that?
Yeah, really two things. When I was going through my low, there was two things that I kept repeatedly telling myself that I struggled with. And that was number one, stay laser focused. I get super excited about a lot of different ideas, and then I end up going in so many different directions. And number two is keep going. Any entrepreneur, any human, like, just goes through difficult time periods in their life where they feel like everything, like literally the walls are falling in and everything's going wrong. But it's just important to remember that, no state lasts forever, and to keep pushing through those difficult times.
With this stay laser focused, my word of the year in 2019 is focus. And I talked about that 2 episodes ago. And I hate I mean, I love it, but I'm already struggling with it. So when you have new ideas, do you have some process you go through or some way of deciding like which ones you're going to pursue and which ones are distractions?
In the beginning, I would say keep that threshold like higher for being able to try new ideas, especially for like young entrepreneurs out there. Try a lot of different things and figure out whatever you like. But then as you get more established, you just start to understand like what works. And it's not always whatever you thought was going to work that ends up being like the big opportunity. For instance, like even Wrigley's started selling baking soda, and they would include a piece of gum with their baking soda for free whenever you bought it. And then eventually they realized that people cared more about the chewing gum than they did the baking soda. And so they completely pivoted. What I do is I'm at a point now where I've got like a pretty strong vision as to where our opportunity is, where we're growing. And if something doesn't align with that, then I'm very quick to say no. And it's difficult. It's so difficult because especially like, as LiveGlam becomes more well-known, as I become more well-known, I've got so many friends, that I've known for years that are pitching me ideas or opportunities coming my way. And, from their mindset, they're just like, you've changed, bro. Like, you're not the same guy you used to be.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but, you have to be able to say no. And it's much better than leading somebody on for like months and months or a year. And you've invested so much of your time. And then you realize like, this really didn't help us get to that next stage. So tying back into what I was saying at the beginning of the podcast of setting some key metrics and just saying, is whatever, you're considering right now, whatever opportunity, is that going to be like a game changer? Is that going to move the needle for us? And when you're starting out and you're doing $100,000 in revenue a year, something that could generate an extra $5,000 might move the needle for you. But, for us, when you get to over $10+ million in annual revenue, I'll scrutinize and I'll find like every reason something won't work before pursuing it, because for it to be a success, it's got to be able to generate at least a couple $1 million in annual revenue for it to be an opportunity worthwhile. And it has to align with our vision as well. So there's like a number of things. It has to align with the brand. It has to align with the vision. It has to align with your company culture. It has to align with your sales objectives. So sort of creating like this diagram and saying, okay, does this opportunity fit? Does it meet all the criteria of what I look for before greenlighting something? And then if yes, then move forward. But it takes a lot. You end up losing a lot more time greenlighting too many ideas when you could have easily just spent an hour longer, in brainstorming and discussion and realizing something won't work, rather than spending 6 months and trying it and realizing down the road.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Like just having those expectations. And when you're earlier in your evolution as an entrepreneur, it's okay to take more chances and try more different things. But as it gets bigger, as the business gets rolling more, then you've got to take not fewer risks, because you're still taking risks. You're just taking risks inside those brands that you've cultivated and have proven that they work, and there's no reason to go and do something else unless A, it's a hobby, B, it makes the world a better place, or C, it makes you money, and I think that having those kinds of objectives makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about failure. You've certainly openly talked about some failures you've experienced in your business. Is there one that you can tell us the story of and maybe we can learn from?
Yeah, definitely. So once I developed a successful model in partnering with influencers and creating content, At that stage, I decided to just continue partnering with more influencers and venturing out. So I had the partnership, which I initially started with, which I described that story. And then basically, I just used that as a cookie cutter to go partner with other beauty influencers to create products around them. And I was pretty much behind the scenes the whole time. And what ended up happening is every time we launched with a new influencer, sales were astronomical. It was great. Everybody loved it. It was partnerships with these influencers. But over time, 6 months in, a year in, like the audiences just kind of started getting, not as excited about the online content. And so sales softened. And so it became very hard to keep the influencers really motivated as their numbers were shrinking, but I was requiring more and more of their time. And there was this day where I ended up losing 3 out of my 5 influencers. Like all 3 of them ended up quitting on the same day. And when you went to the website, like everything was branded around them. The products were built on them. This isn't something that they were just endorsing. They were the product themselves. Literally overnight, I had to figure out a way to completely reinvent everything. And especially, not just did I have to leave, but it created a lot of strain on my remaining 2 relationships because they were just like, whoa, why is everyone else leaving? Should we be leaving too? So it was a really stressful time because, we were up to, I think at that point, about $5 to $7 million in revenue. Everything was going great. And then all of a sudden, boom, we hit this wall. And what I didn't expect is, our influencers had pulled out. So my recommendation and what I learned from that is never build your brand on the shoulders of anybody else. Never build your sales or your product on the shoulders of anyone else. There's just too much risk, especially when you're dealing with people. It takes a lot longer to build your own brand and to get people excited around it. Like we're still struggling with that, but finally we've been able to break some major stride in 2018. I would say even though it takes longer, just make sure to do it the right way and don't ever put too much power in other people's hands that you can't control because you expose yourself to too much risk if something goes wrong.
Yeah, or at least know that you're doing that and then have your plans for how to handle it. Like, especially, again, I think we're coming back to these themes of there's the earlier part of your business and then there's how you can evolve beyond it. Early in your business, being able to have that original influencer and really take yourself from 0 to, the end of that first year. I don't know. I mean, I guess I should ask it as a question. Would you go back and do that differently if you could do it now?
I look at almost every single one of my failures later on as, wow, thank God that happened, because if that had not happened, like just what I learned from that or what opportunity it led me to, in my life, I've definitely had a lot of big failures. I would say more so the magnitude of my failures have probably been a lot stronger than what a lot of other people have experienced. And now, looking back at a place where I'm back to being, successful again, and I don't want to say on top, but, sort of on my way up again. Looking back, I'm so thankful for all of those failures and all of those mistakes, because ultimately it just helped lead me to, the track that we're on now. No, I guess I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah, it's like you can advise someone how it didn't work out or something. That idea, like don't put your business on the backs of other people, totally makes sense. And why you had to come out from under that. Or you could even have said, don't put your business on all content, have a product behind it, right? That was sort of your first fall off after the original push at the beginning. Yeah, those are great pieces of advice. I think what they are, though, are learning moments you've had over the evolution of your business. And everybody's going to have those, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your business is, no matter how many books you read or podcasts you listen to or bits of advice you get from whomever. You kind of have to navigate it yourself, and you have to expand yourself and shrink yourself and know how to move forward from those things. That's what being an entrepreneur is. you know?
Yeah, exactly. And, opportunities come from sometimes unlikely places. I just sort of saw growth as like this straight line to the up and to the right. But you even look at like major companies like, Apple for a long time struggled, and then boom, they come out with their iPhone and then they take off. And then today their iPhone, Tim Cook comes out and says, oh, iPhone sales are soft in China. And then all of a sudden they come falling down. Tesla could release like a new Model X or a new SUV or a new battery pack. Amazon could come out with Amazon Web Services, right? And now all of a sudden it's a profitable company. So don't expect growth to be like this straight line up and to the right. It's sort of like snakes and ladders where you'll uncover some opportunity, you'll climb a small ladder, you'll get super excited, it takes you so far, and then you have to figure out like, okay, well, what's going to help you get to that next step? And often it's not the same ladder. So just be open to different opportunities, but obviously be selective enough to not try to chase everything.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is an adventure. And if it wasn't, it wouldn't be interesting. And, how you handle that is what makes you a good business owner, or maybe not cut out to be a business owner. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and I want to talk about two things in the last section. One is influencer marketing. You do a ton of that, and you've talked about it a little bit. I'd like to dig in a little bit more. And then I want to hit on the idea of beauty, and you certainly are inside that space and addressing that head on. So do those two things sound good for the last part of our conversation?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, cool. All right, this break is sponsored again by Shine Insurance. And since we're talking with Dhar Mann, an influencer in the social media space, I thought it would be a great idea to share our social media space with you. If you haven't been there already, check out YouTube and check out Shine Insurance's channel. So you could just search Shine Insurance and you'll find our channel there. And we address three things. The first is our new home buyer's guide. We have some videos in the YouTube channel about how to buy a new home that can also lead you to our new home buyer's guide product. We have answers to insurance questions. So whether it's home or auto or business insurance, if you have a question about insurance, you can check out our channel and there's lots of answers there. And then finally, information and advice about being a business owner. Many of those videos are these podcast episodes, but there are other things as well. Book reviews, ideas put together, some of the presentations I've done publicly, all that is there on the Shine Insurance channel. So check it out over there at YouTube right now. Okay, let's go back to the show. All right, we're back with Dhar Mann. He is the founder of LiveGlam and a motivational speaker himself. Dhar, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
So the heart of your business, as we've talked about, is really influencer marketing. And maybe the best way to start with that is, what does that mean?
Yeah. So, the world is changing, especially, through social media. And so traditionally you have celebrities that are people that are musicians or they're movie stars or TV stars. But now there's been this whole rise of social media stars that are just sort of famous for being famous. Some of them, have different skills or whatnot, but all of their notoriety and fan base comes through social media. And so what we consider a social media influencer is somebody who basically uses their social media platform in order to influence their audience to do something, which from a brand perspective is drive sales for their products.
Yeah. And early in your business, the influencers were kind of the front of the business plan, the marketing plan, and then the product kind of came along and was behind it. Is that still how your business is structured now?
Now it's 100% product.
So let's talk about the product a little bit. There is a culture around makeup, and to pretend like I knew it more than a month ago would be just that, pretending. But when I knew we were going to talk about a month ago, I subscribed to a bunch of your stuff. And so now my Instagram feed has been full of LiveGlam videos. And I've really gotten into this culture and idea around makeup. And it seems like, especially in the last maybe couple of years, it's taken on, well, I don't know, because I haven't paid attention. How do you see makeup now and LiveGlam's kind of role in what makeup is now?
It's unbelievable how much things have exploded. I haven't been in the industry so long where I can tell you what it was like, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But more so than ever, people, especially like, millennials, are making purchasing decisions based on what they're seeing on Instagram, on YouTube, based on what their friends are recommending, based on what their favorite influencers are wearing. And so what that did is it sort of took away the power from some of these traditional big cosmetic juggernauts like the Estee Lauders, the LVMHs, the L'Oreals. And all of a sudden, it gave rise to a lot of these smaller indie brands that are digital first, like people that just really understood social media and how to use Instagram in particular. So I think it's really created a shift where anybody now could start a brand and could essentially become a competitor to any of these major established incumbents. And that's why a lot of these major players like the Estee Lauders and such are just going on a buying spree because they don't really know how to compete with these smaller indie brands. Just to give you an idea, Kylie Cosmetics, within their first 18 months, did $450 million in sales. Fenty Beauty was a collaboration between Sephora and Rihanna. So you're seeing a lot of these influencers and a lot of these celebrities like entering the beauty space and creating these major market opportunities.
Huh. So in those examples like Rihanna and Sephora, that you've got the influencer and the brand. It's sort of the same structure that you've been talking about, how you've grown your business, where the Sephora is the product and Rihanna is the influencer, and that's working.
Exactly. Or you're seeing situations where people become an influencer themselves and then create their own cosmetics line. There's lots of examples with companies doing over $100 million in annual revenue in that case. And then there's examples such as like the Fashion Novas and the Morphe and the Color Pops, like other strong indie brands with $100+ million in annual revenue that are just partnering with so many different influencers that they're just getting a rush of their audiences signing up for their products.
Yeah, I think what my takeaway from watching it is just the artistry of makeup. And I don't know if it's always been that way, but it seems like the artistic endeavor of how you choose to put your makeup on and how you choose to put that palette together is amazing. It really is a neat sort of piece on its own. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, what's interesting is that I have not seen any other industry as heavily influenced by influencers as makeup. Like when you walk into a GNC, I don't know where most of the audience is from, but a general nutrition center, you don't see protein powders and supplements with the faces of fitness influencers all over them. Or, if you were to walk in, like there's travel influencers, there's, if fashion influencers, you don't walk into an H&M or a Zara and are just inundated with, images of influencers. But if you walk into a Sephora or an Ulta, as soon as you walk in, you'll start to see social media influencers like the moment you step through the door. And, so much of this is driven through video. One of the things that I think is unique about the beauty industry is that you can literally change the way that you look and the way that you feel about yourself instantaneously. Like if you were to get motivated by a fitness influencer that you see on Instagram, okay, great. That motivation can spark something that's going to get you to buy some supplements and you're going to sign up for a gym membership. And maybe 6 months down the road, you're going to start to see some results if you're consistent. But with makeup, you can literally transform your entire appearance from day to night. You could be a completely different person. And I think that people love that sort of instantaneousness. And then it's also sparking that inner creativity to be able to be whoever you want to be, express yourself however you want to express yourself. Whether that's a boy wearing makeup, whether that's a girl wearing like certain extreme type of makeup or a more everyday look, you've got that ability.
So that kind of brings us to this concept of beauty. And certainly the beauty industry has played, and the fashion industry has played on beauty in ways that are perfectly healthy and fine, and ways that are not healthy and have created images that have led to, negative self-image in some ways and other kinds of, negative looks at oneself. How are you handling that part of being in the beauty industry? And what do you see your responsibilities as an influencer in the industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, social media in general, I think, is making people more insecure. We definitely spend a lot more time looking at other people's lives and thinking like, wow, look at their Christmas, or look at where this person spent New Year's. Why is my life not like that? How come I don't have, the big Christmas tree and the wife and the kids and the cars in the garage or whatever it is? So I think in general that's happening, and we're seeing that, with the rise in depression and unfortunately like a rise in suicides and such. But also, the beauty industry is really no different. So brands that I think use a lot of well-known models, or quote unquote, like, these pretty girls that fit like a certain mold, I think are becoming sort of less popular now as brands that are using more everyday relatable faces. I think Glossier is one of the companies that really is hitting that market right. They understand their audience, that it's sort of the everyday girl that just wants to feel great about themselves. So I think if you're a brand and only focusing on pretty faces, you're going to be disconnected from your audience, and then ultimately, it will hurt your sales, as companies like Victoria's Secret, for instance, are going through right now.
Right, where you're creating an image that isn't what most people actually look like, and that had been the mainstream for so long. It seems like in the fashion industry and the beauty industry, and to the detriment of many people. And it seems like you just said, and I'm glad to hear that more and more influencers and marketers are understanding that to reflect a more regular, normal perspective of who we are as humans is healthier for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. One of the top makeup companies, MAC, which I'm sure a lot of people, even the men, have heard of. So they did a big collaboration with Mariah Carey last winter for the holidays, and then this past year they've collaborated with this Filipino male influencer out of Florida. He's like a heavier set person, but amazing personality, so much personality. And that was the face of their whole cosmetics line. And they ended up relaunching it 3 times because it was so successful.
Cool. So if someone wants to be an influencer, if someone wants to move into that space, what bits of sort of pragmatic advice would you provide for how to do that?
That's a great question. First you got to know like what comes naturally to you. Everybody's got something that they're really good at. Like, are you great at cooking? Are you great at fitness? Are you great at fashion? Are you just a really funny person? Are you an amazing dancer? Are you a motivational person that helps inspires others? So first, pick like a category that comes very naturally to yourself. Second, figure out which platform you want to build upon. A lot of people just think, oh, I'm going to become an influencer and I'll just go on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Like
Right.
they try to target everything.
Yeah.
Definitely play around with all of them and see what works, but also just figure out what you're good at. Like, are you good at taking awesome photos, and writing great captions? Then I would say Instagram's for you. Are you not a visual person? You're more so just writing, then I would say, try some of the Blogger or Twitter platforms. Are you better at short form content, video content? Then I would say Facebook. Are you better at long form content, long form video content? Then I would say YouTube. So figure out, try creating content yourself and figure out what feels most comfortable for you. I've been able to build my audience on Facebook first. And if you do really well on one platform and make your mark there, it becomes much easier to grow your other platforms because you already have a built-in fan base. And then consistency. I mean, because people get discouraged so quickly. They think like, oh man, I posted for 2 months and I only got 10 likes and, this isn't going to work out. So they're quick to like give up and do something else. But if you approach it just like you would in like a business startup or any other opportunity, like learning to play a sport when you're a kid, it doesn't matter how many baskets you miss or how many times you fall off your bike, you're going to keep trying. If you approach it with that kind of mindset, then eventually you can get there.
Totally. And I think that when you see something hit, if you put 10 videos out on YouTube, if that's your thing, and you look at that one that did a little bit better than all the other ones, and you say, okay, why did that work? And then you do that with 5 more, and one of those hits, and then you say, what did I do in that was different than the other ones? And what you start to see is a reflection of what people actually want as opposed to what you think they want. And I think that when you start to be able to see your content from what people actually want, that's when you start to see true growth in whatever it is that you're creating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's just like we were talking about sort of the business ups and downs. Like you'll figure out what you think your audience wants. You'll start creating a lot of content, and then you realize that is no longer working or the audience has changed. So as long as you're constantly learning and constantly evolving and doubling down on what works and engaging with your audience that you do have, it could work out. It takes a long time. And that's why I've strategically chosen Facebook, because for me, I analyze Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. And what I love about Facebook is it has the share button. And so things can go very viral very quickly. So that's where I focus all of my efforts. And now slowly that growth is starting to spill over into other platforms as well.
Cool. All right, last question. Where do you see LiveGlam, your motivational work, all the work that you're doing 5 years from now?
I've been having a lot more conversations around that recently, but this is definitely more, I'm passion driven more so than profit driven. So I still hope to be running LiveGlam, 5 years from now, and just being at a place where it's like a household name. A lot of people have either heard of it or use their products, expand our team. We're currently a global team of 50. So hope to have like hundreds and hundreds of people around the world, and really just, helping to inspire the beauty industry, helping to inspire our customers. We have a really active giving back program where we're constantly helping out people in need. So being able to touch as many lives as possible is definitely front and center. For me personally, similar goals, just expanding my audience, being able to speak in front of crowds and inspire people to create change in their lives and go after their dreams and really live their best life.
Dhar, take, however long you want to. And if folks want to find you, how can they do so?
Yeah, definitely. So you can look me up just Googling Dhar Mann, DHARMANN. But my website is dharmann.com. And my beauty subscription, LiveGlam, is www.liveglam.com.
Cool. Dhar, it has been a pleasure. I feel like I've learned a lot about growing a business. I've learned a lot about just how to be an influencer and how to make your brand work, and learned a little bit about that book at the very beginning. And I can't even remember the name of it. I'm going to have to go back, but about high-level company objectives. What was the name of that?
Measure What Matters.
Yeah, so I'm going to get that book and make it happen too. So thank you again so much for being on Scratch Entrepreneur.
Hey, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks to Dhar Mann for sharing the LiveGlam story with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's a couple of things we need you to do right now. First, please subscribe to Scratch Entrepreneur on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, and so that you can listen to more and have them right in your inbox. If you would rate and review the show, tell us what you loved, tell us what you didn't like, and what you would love to hear next. It really, really does help. And then please do head over to Facebook to our Scratch Entrepreneur group, where we talk about all things entrepreneur, including the conversations in these shows, but topics above and beyond that as well. All right. Until the next time, we truly appreciate you listening.